Apparently, World of Warcraft lost a quarter of its player base, about 3 million over a few months. But let's get real. By this point, subscription drops for WoW will likely be handled by the company with enough grains of salt to supply a McDonald's for a year, whether concern is warranted or not. Ever since WoW first became a thing, every few months the community has rung the alarm bell about how World of Warcraft is dying. Age of Conan's gonna kill WoW, don't you know? There have been many Age of Conans and Cry of Doom and Gloom over even otherwise benign changes, like allowing multiple talent specializations. At this point, it shouldn't surprise anyone if those at Blizzard are affected by a cross between Cry Wolf syndrome and survivorship bias, and are unmotivated to listen to a community with a record of useless advice. And while I'd agree with many criticisms about Apexis dailies being prohibitively boring, and raids being easier to get into than heroics, and I do agree those are significant problems and have meaningfully contributed to the subscriber loss, I feel the real big fish is being left partially unfried. Sure, a dip in numbers happens after the boom in population from an expansion, but they were pretty insignificant drops up until Cataclysm, when they started becoming noticeable. And while I've heard many people say why they think it happened, one question I've yet to hear anyone ask is, where'd they all go? 3 million people didn't just vanish. Are they playing WildStar, Rift, Eve, Arcade, Pony Adventure Quest? What did they switch to? Did the Blizzard secret death squads round them up into concentration camps? Don't get any ideas, Blizzard. Unless you'll hire me as a consultant. My point is, more attention could be given to where people went, to understand why they left, and more specifically what they're getting elsewhere that World of Warcraft isn't providing. That's ultimately what it comes down to. We could talk about Apexis dailies and content lulls, and have plenty to say, but what do people really want? I feel the most important letters in MMORPG are the first two, massively multiplayer. The entire reason to play an MMO is that it's a social experience. Part of what keeps people engaged is there's other people sharing experiences, and that's probably what's preserved the existing subscriber count all this time. People have so much invested in World of Warcraft and so many fond memories from days gone past, they don't want to give up. What people truly need is for their friends to log in and play with them again. They want to log in to a populated friend list, not an empty city and sad sense of loneliness. In my opinion, that is possibly the biggest problem World of Warcraft has, how antisocial the game has become. WoW has always had problems, every game does, and I'm under no illusions about how miserable a 4-hour Blackrock Depths run was. But I feel it was in Cataclysm where the problems started to weigh too heavily, even though problems existed previously. Let's take a trip down memory lane, but first garrisons. We'll start with them. To create a sense of agency and importance for the player in Warlords of Draenor, each player was given a garrison. The same garrison. An instanced garrison, mass-produced, that no others see without a group, in which you spend much of your time at max level, isolated from the world around you. Your fortress of solitude. Ever since Wrath of the Lich King, I noticed an escalating trend of the player being treated as an almost messianic entity. A champion and a hero. Every player greeted in such a manner. A sense of individuality is important in an MMO. With so many people, something needs to be done to set a person apart. But World of Warcraft started trying to make people feel special by creating a heavily homogenized experience that told everyone they're a superhero. And when everyone is a hero, no one is. Everyone is Superman, and everyone has a fortress of solitude, where all their needs are met and items are provided. Except the one thing people truly need in an MMO: other players. Nowadays, low-level dungeons are blasted through with little social interaction, and most group quests can be easily soloed. In fact, with heirlooms, a level 8 imp can solo Hogger. Even without heirlooms, an imp can still kill Hogger if you resummon it. Group quest, My Gluteus Maximus. Cataclysm launched with, and maintained, many controversies, from the disaster that was Tol Barad, culminating in the attacker 10 times bonus that resulted in mass win trading across all servers before being shut down days later, to mechanics being removed from bosses whilst random quest mobs had their health and damage ramped up, which was an almost trollish response to people's desire for things to be more challenging, and instead being given things more frustrating and time-consuming, as if daring people to unsubscribe. People who played in Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King have something Warlords of Draenor has thus far largely failed to create. Memories. I remember winning Wintergrasp alone by taking a Demolisher and backdooring my way through the Western Wall, with the Alliance raid group distracted, fighting over siege workshops down the road. I remember running Blackrock Depths on my rogue. I brought both levels of goblin jumper cables, repair bots, and plenty of vanishing powder. They came in handy on many occasions. I remember leveling engineering on every character for maximum convenience. I paid for summons out to the best Jeeves recipe area when I was too low level to get there myself, and paid upwards of 500 gold for people to farm for me. My leveling was easy, sure, but I still had to put in effort and paid a premium. With heirlooms, however, there's no reason to use goblin landmines or compact harvest reapers. Things die in 1 or 2 hits, and that's the same for everyone. No one needs to group for a group quest. And there's no excitement for getting new gear either, since with heirlooms there's no reason to, nor is there reason to craft leveling equipment from those not of the engineering persuasion. I would have preferred a very different heirloom system, and maybe I'll talk about that in a future video, but I digress. The strategically deep Wintergrasp World PvP zone was replaced with the boring and critically reviled Tol Barad, and when it was clear Blizzard wasn't going to do anything about it, I quit the game for a time. I've lobbied the same criticism to PlanetSide, but it merits repeating. Telling someone if they don't like the game to unsub is a good way to lower revenue. Everyone had to be Superman, so everyone got the same hero treatment, the same Fortress of Solitude, the same homogenized experience, and a homogenized experience is antisocial and doesn't create memories. I challenge you, ask someone who played in Burning Crusade to regale you with tales of amazing and unique things happening. Then pose the same question for Cataclysm. Over the course of many people, do you think answers will average out for both expansions? What in Cataclysm compares to the glory of winning the pre-nerf Sky Shadow race, or having your party die and soloing pre-nerf Kael'thas in heroic Magister's Terrace? Now, of course, there were denialists. Back when Tol Barad was coming out, there were plenty of fanboys that said people who were critical of it were just being nostalgic to Wintergrasp, and weren't accepting how great Tol Barad really was, despite its objective and demonstrable lack of depth and the disasters that came later. But if you are someone who didn't play earlier and haven't heard of Heroic Magister's Terrace or Sky Shatter, and are having difficulty understanding my point, and specific examples of homogenization are what you seek, then you need look no further than class design. It took a bit of digging on my part, but I managed to dredge up some old spell tooltips from the Wrath of the Lich King and early Cataclysm era, for the benefit of those who may not have played at relevant times, and thus have no point of reference or comparison. This is for you. The best example is probably Battle Res. Present day in Warlords of Draenor, several classes have what was originally a druid spell, the ability to revive someone during combat on a 10-minute cooldown. This was essentially forced onto Death Knights and Warlocks. It became so overused that a cap was later implemented on how many could be used during a raid, and Warlocks got a better version of the spell due to their Soulstone being castable both preemptively as well as after the target died. When Wrath of the Lich King first came out, Death Knights were generally considered overpowered, and while they received an enormous number of nerfs, nearly all were blatant removals of mechanics or forced homogenization of abilities, rather than a change to damage output or their basic attack rotation. This was later lampshaded by Walkrendor in his class stereotypes video with the infamous line, "Don't know how to play my class, still do 20k DPS." A Death Knight could use between 1 and 4 basic attacks, and that comprised most of their damage and self-healing rotation. Icy Touch, Plague Strike, and either Death Strike or Obliterate. You could amplify this with Heart Strike, Scourge Strike, Rune Strike, and Death Coil during cooldowns, but considerable damage could be done with only a few buttons, and this has largely remained the case up until present day. Throughout Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, Pandaria, and now Warlords of Draenor, my main was a Death Knight, and you'll still find a couple old soloing guides on my channel, the most popular being a Phoenix Mount farm tutorial from early Cataclysm. So please take it to heart when I say Death Knights were made so boring it made me take 6-month breaks. Hysteria, also called Unholy Frenzy, was a buff a Death Knight could give to a melee DPS. It was deleted from the game. Bloodworms, a guardian that a Death Knight could get, was deleted from the game. Degeneration, an anti-heal mechanic, was deleted from the game. The turn into ghoul temporarily after kill talent was deleted from the game. Desecration was deleted from the game and later returned differently as a level 90 talent. Corpse Explosion was deleted from the game and returned as a cosmetic minor glyph with the spell effects and cost of cast removed and has no damage effect. The old version allowed a damage burst if you used a glyph and targeted a corpse near another corpse to get a chain reaction. This list could go on for quite some time, but the point is, Death Knight utility and mechanics were removed or nerfed, instead of adjustments to their standard rotation, essentially dumbing the class down significantly without affecting their damage output. Corpse Explosion, which once required some targeting to out-damage Death Coil, apparently required too much thinking. If you care to fly to Acheris in the Eastern Plaguelands, you'll still see the Death Knight class trainers giving lectures and advice on how to play the class properly and use certain abilities, even though much of what they demonstrate has since been deleted. The worst was Ghoul Res. Death Knights used to be able to target their Raise Dead spell at a dead friendly player to raise that player as an undead ghoul instead of spawning a ghoul pet for the Death Knight. This allowed a Death Knight to essentially cut their own DPS to quasi-revive someone else. It was useful for pulling up dead damage dealers in raids when a druid revive needed to be saved for a tank or healer. I attended many raids early on with a support build focused on protecting healers with anti-magic zone, buffing DPS with hysteria, and specced into death runes so I could revive as many ghouls as possible so dead DPS could still contribute. I didn't want a druid battle res, it was a druid spell. I didn't need a druid's abilities. I felt redistributing copies of a spell devalued its uniqueness, so despite not even having a druid, I felt unhappy. There was a controversy about ghoul res when Wrath of the Lich King came out, but it was related to ghouls being considered overpowered in arenas. To me, the sensible option was to scale the cooldown up to 10 minutes, where it wouldn't be usable in arenas, and then increase the cooldown reduction granted by Plague Strike talents proportionally, so it was otherwise unaffected in dungeons and raids, or disable its use on players in arenas. Instead of an easy solution that required only some number tweaking, over the course of several months, the spell was split into both Raise Dead and Raise Ally, nerfed, removed, and the Druid Revive was redistributed under the same name, and that's how we're at the current Raise Ally spell for Death Knights, and where it came from. Death Knights and Druids weren't the only classes affected by homogenization or dumbing down. Warlocks had things like Ritual of Doom removed, changing the use of a Doomguard from a complicated and dangerous ritual known affectionately as Doomguard Roulette into a simplistic, weaker spell issued to everyone. Priests and Hunters also wound up sharing a spell, though I don't remember the name. The thing is, when you dumb mechanics down and lower the bar so much, and remove a player's right to fail, and make every player Superman, and tell every player they're a hero, you also remove their right to excel. No one will experience the glory of beating the pre-nerf Sky Shadow race again, or solo backdoor a Wintergrasp victory against 80 members of the opposite faction again. Those opportunities don't exist anymore. They've been removed so that everyone can be Superman, which is actually kind of odd considering how bad the game's new player tutorials are. Personally, I feel the starting level 1 to 5 content should include tutorials for movement, speech, interface, and inventory management, and be done by a voiced instructor, like the Call of Duty 4 tutorial, with an option to do a speed drill quest to jump to level 5 if it's a new alt and you're not new to the game. Such a feature would both provide support for new players as well as a skip-through bureaucracy for old ones, and I feel this embodies my point. I didn't see the need to take care of some players to be mutually exclusive with having content and options for others, nor did I see dumbing down to be as good a solution as offering better tutorials and support. I would have opted to teach to succeed rather than lower the bar. You have your garrison, you have NPCs saluting you at every turn, you have your faction leader telling you how all the hopes of the future rest on you, but everyone has that. If I wanted a Mary Sue story where everyone is Superman, I'd watch the Twilight movies. When classes are dumbed down and homogenized, their diversification removed, the bar lowered, and the experience so heavily streamlined that players are made the same, even if you tell them they're all special, their sense of agency, uniqueness, diversity, and the value they as an individual bring to a given event is reduced, not increased. Everyone has a garrison. Not everyone has a pre-nerf Sky Shatter whip, and now they can never get one. That opportunity is gone. And when that happens, special moments that draw people together and are burned into one's memory for years to come don't happen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.